wondering where the heck we've been. Michael and I have been working hard to resolve some technical issues for our special guest tonight. So, if there's a possibility that they can't get into the studio, what we're going to do is just go ahead and stop the podcast as it is, and then we're going to jump on a Zoom meeting, record the podcast for you, and I will put it up tonight at around 9 o'clock or 9:30 Eastern time. So 2 hours from now, 2.5 hours from now, because I think that this is a guest that we just don't want to have to postpone even another week to hear from. So we're standing by, waiting for them to come into the studio. If they don't get here in the next minute or two, we'll jump into Zoom. So, how are you, Michael?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good,
We're just riding it out.
good, yeah. And if everyone who practices Catholic folk magic or Catholic conjure, just ask San Isidro to make this to fix this for us. See, San Isidro's listening.
I can hear them.
Can you hear me?
And we can hear you.
Hear you.
We just
Wait,
invoked.
turning it off. How about now?
Yes,
Yes.
we just invoked San Isidro. We're live.
And I was just going to say, whoever tried Umaloki, it didn't work.
Yeah, exactly. And we just invoked San Isidro because I said, you're the one that made me this nerd. So do your thing. And if not, we were going to jump on Zoom with you and then just record it and upload it. But we are live, guys. Thank you, everyone, for sitting sitting tight, and thank you, Antonio, for help working through this with us, folks. Tonight, like I said, we're really excited, and I did not want to postpone this another week because our guest tonight is a published author and journalist whose work has been featured on, and I'll probably miss half of the citations, but Washington Post, New York Daily News, NBC News, The Wild Hunt, Religious Services Network. I might have screwed that up. Religious Services News.
Religion News Service.
Really, yeah, there you go. He's the proud son of Southern Italian immigrants, New York City boy, and the author of the incredible new book, which, see, if we were doing this in the beginning, this would have looked really slick, but now it's just going to have to be what it is. But the incredible new book, The Evil Eye, The History, Mystery, and Magic of the Quiet Curse. Our special guest tonight is Antonio Pagliarulo, and he joins us now. So welcome, Antonio. It was definitely worth the wait.
It really was. Absolutely. Thank you so much for troubleshooting and getting us through all of that.
So before we even jump in and dig into our topic tonight, did I get anything wrong in my intro? Did I miss anything important that you want to share?
Nope.
Okay.
You got it great.
Well, let's start off then, I think, by helping our viewers, some of whom may not be familiar with your work at the moment, understand what inspired you to write this book, which is about something that's, for all intents and purposes, a universal phenomenon in the esoteric world.
It is. So what inspired me, I grew up, as you said, I was born in New York City, born in Manhattan, was raised in the Bronx, and I grew up in a home. My parents, are from Italy. My grandparents, who lived downstairs from us, are also from my mother's parents from Italy. And we grew up in a home, my siblings and I, where the evil eye was just always present. That was one of the things in terms of when we look at, what Italian folk magic, what was always present was the evil eye. And my grandmother would always, she always had, there was bowls on the table, and she had her oil, her water, and different things. And people would call, friends, neighbors, people from other states, because they knew my grandmother could, detect malocchio. She could take it off. She had what they did in her town. This was a very, a common thing for my grandmother, for her mother. It was something that just happened in our family. And my grandfather was also, obviously a very big believer in this, and in his way, he was very much into the sign, not only, the mano cornuta and all that, but he was into always, being aware of what hand gestures could ward evil, could sort of help things, move things along. And he did everything according to he had this garden, like a lot of Italian immigrants, he had this amazing garden, and he did everything, which I learned later on in life, he did everything according to the phases of the moon. And he would make wine in the basement of our home. And he would actually, after we did everything, he would move the wine up certain shelves based upon the phases of the moon. And yet, my grandparents, as I said in the book, would never have considered themselves, witches or, they were Catholic, and they were just doing something that was sort of to them, very normal, and more of, I guess, for them, a vernacular kind of magic, because they were speaking things. These were prayers that they knew, that my grandmother, uttered, and never out loud, was always silent, because this was something that she learned from her own mother, and it was stuff that was just passed on, and it was just normal. The evil eye was the biggest thing, because it was always present, and you could get it from I laugh now, but I still live this way. When I was a kid, and I said this the other day, even something as simple as the new toy you got, okay, if it was a shiny new toy, you unveiled it to the neighborhood kids very slowly, because there could be jealousy involved in that. And if you did that, someone was going to put the eye or malocchio on the toy or on you. Speaking, we lived, of course, we celebrated achievements, we celebrated everything, but you always did it very quietly. You didn't go out and boast about something. If you got a scholarship, you didn't go out and scream it on the rooftops that I got a scholarship. In fact, my grandfather was always, when we celebrated something, it was always, yeah, seat, be quiet about it. Don't say anything. That means, in stai zitto is, seat, and his dialect was be quiet. Don't say anything about it, because people will be jealous, people will be, resentful. Or if you're boasting, which is one of the ways I write about getting the eye, you can bring the eye upon you, because you're sort of tempting fate in that way. So it was always present, and it did form the foundation for my life as a practitioner, because I thought this was something that was, I grew up in a neighborhood in the Bronx. It was, a lot of ethnicities, but we were in our own house, and I went to a very small private Catholic school. And I thought this was just something, kind of around, centered to a little sort of area. And then I got to high school, and I went to high school here in Manhattan, where I've lived for most of my adult life. And I went to this high school that was public and had so many different kids. And I sat there and learned that, my friend Joshua, who was Jewish, was talking about the evil eye. And, Rusa was Zoroastrian, and she spoke about the evil eye. And Maldeojo was right. But also from the sense of my mother was born in Italy, but grew up in Argentina. So then she came here. So I had, she spoke to us in English and in Italian, but to my grandparents in Spanish. So we had the Malocchio and then Maldeojo in both places coming through. So it was always present. And then when I realized growing up, and especially as a teenager, as a young adult, I said, wow, this is not just me. We're all talking about the same thing. And then, of course, as a kid going to Italy a lot, that was, no matter, even in parts of Italy where I didn't necessarily speak the dialect, the Neapolitan dialect that we speak, I can speak, but there are parts of, further south. I mean, my father's from Bari. I do not speak Barese. I couldn't understand the Barese dialect. But if I talked about Umalocchio, everyone knew what I was talking about. That there was no need for a language there. They understood exactly what I was talking about. And it's the same thing. Even now, my husband is Jewish, and, very much a part of Jewish culture. So these are it was just always present. And when I looked at everything, I thought, so many people over the years have come to me and asked questions that relate right back to the evil eye, and so many people will say, but I don't know what to do. What can you tell? And I wanted people to have a reference, and I wanted people to, first of all, understand what the evil eye is, understand how it operates, and how you can then go about taking the steps to not only be aware of it, but to diagnose it, cure it. And it's something, again, unfortunately, this is something that happens very much in all of our lives over and over again. So that's what really inspired me. It was from way back when, and then just my whole life, it's been a part of my life,
Well, I have a billion more questions,
Yeah.
but I have a tendency, and this is the Franciscan priest in me, that to just take over with asking the questions, and that's just not fair to Michael, who asked brilliant questions. So, Michael, have you got a question before I forget the next one in my mind?
I don't necessarily have a question. It's more of a comment because coming from an African American background, I didn't grow up with the evil eye, not necessarily in that kind of context, but, as African Americans, especially from the South, my family is from the South Carolina area. We would have sayings about kind of don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. And, even the concept of shade, that kind of understanding of like, somebody's throwing shade has this very kind of connotation of kind of the evil eye and kind of throwing that negativity on somebody else. And even when we talk about hoodoo, we talk about having cross conditions and the same kind of conditions that have the evil eye are the same that create the cross conditions, also being boastful, having somebody be jealous at you. So it is a universal concept, even if we don't necessarily use the same words for them. But I think that the concept in and of itself is universal of that.
Yeah, I agree, and that actually dovetails a little bit into the one of the first questions I wanted to ask Antonio, and it was a question that when we chatted last week or the week before, I was having to just stifle myself from asking because I really wanted to hear it live here. So in your research, and I just have to say, because people who know me know I don't praise books willy-nilly. I really do only have the folks on here whose books I think bring great value and bring great value to our target audience. So what was so refreshing about your book was it combines the research element, the academic element, and the praxis, the practitioner piece, and the experiences of the gnosis of having learned from that. So I'm really curious in your, as a former researcher and academic, when we were growing up, like a pregnant woman, for example, if you walk down the street and you saw somebody with a mole on their face, you'd say, we would say, touch your ass before you touch your face. Because you didn't want that to transfer to the baby through molecule. Right. I was showing Michael before we got on. I said I didn't know if we'd have time for show and tell on tonight, but I wanted to just show from, for the folks who've read your book, that this is a real thing. And I don't know how well people will see it, but that tiny little cornuta and the Faith, Hope, and Love charms on the red ribbon on the safety pin is what was on my bassinet when I was a baby.
Right.
My curiosity is, those sorts of things. One of the other things that a lot of Americans don't understand when we say maloquio is that it's not necessarily something that's always done with malice. When we were taught from the time we were little that you don't give somebody a compliment without saying sabanari, because you might not even understand that there's envy somewhere in your subconscious mind. So if you say, "Oh, that baby's beautiful, God bless her," "Oh, I'm so happy for you, God bless you," and you got a new car, you throw a quarter in it and say, "God bless you," so you never have to throw money in that car. Is that something that's kind of universal in different practices where it's not always intentional? Like I know some cultures think it's purely intentional, and they think we're nuts to not have baby showers. We're nuts to not have to have to say God bless you.
I don't think it was necessarily in the course of my research that in every culture or in every person who I interviewed said that there was that God bless you afterwards, but certainly that was the second way when I wrote about the unintentional way you can give the eye is just that. It's unintentional, which is why there are so many practices like saying, oh, God bless you, he's beautiful, baby's beautiful, she's beautiful, God bless you. Or in many cultures and in parts of southern Italy, it's not uncommon as well for people to get a compliment, and then they'll, you're taught to turn around and spit. That's big. Also, when a man, and I wrote about this in one of the ways to ward, a man, will, it's, tocchi coglioni is what happens, and you grab yourself to ward off the evil eye. In what I think it was in the Armenian, I interviewed someone, and it was, you got a compliment, you scratched your butt. That was to ward it away as well. So in most of the people I interviewed, and most of the research I came across, there was that idea of the unintentional, but there were many where it was not that the whole unintentional aspect didn't figure into it. There was envy, there was jealousy, and it was directed towards you, and that was it. The person who had the envy and jealousy might not have really, been necessarily aware that their own envy was really, so deeply ingrained or just so strong. And that could be the quote unquote unintentional part of it. But by far and large, there was that sense of the unintentional happens. That's why you say, God bless you. That's why in Islam they say, mashallah. There's a lot of different, every time there's a compliment, there's that something to ward away that eye, just in case you're not aware that maybe you had it 3 years ago when you were envious about someone, or maybe it's just a tiny little bit and you think, it's all right, and that's not going to do anything. But you say the sort of afterthought, or you knock, some people still knock wood. And John, like from how we walked around, even as kids, we walked around with our hands in our pockets like this all the time, because you could walk down the street, someone, you didn't know would look at you and say something. And it wasn't only about you. They could compliment someone in your family. They can compliment the new porch that your parents just had done, and it was like you did this underneath all the time. So mostly in my research, I discovered that the unintentional aspect was present across most. There were people who I spoke to and interviewed who did say, we didn't worry so much about that. The unintentional. It was more like if someone gave you the eye, it was intentional. Or the thing that I did find a lot was also the aspect of which surprised me actually, was the boasting. Because when I spoke to people about that, but I remember going back to my high school days, and when I had friends who were different cultures and ethnicities and religions, and that was also a big thing. I remember sitting with my friend Joshua, who was Jewish, and talking about the colleges, when we were seniors, and he was talking about this, I remember saying, oh my God, you got into where you wanted to go. And he was like, but don't say anything, like be quiet, don't say anything. I didn't know it was, so that was already there. It was that thing of boasting was a danger, very much.
Right.
But the unintentional seems to be, I think, what a lot of people, when they think of the evil eye, the unintentional is what most people get a little bit stumped by.
So would you say that it's fair to characterize that piece? Because I think like one of the things I loved in the book was that you really take the time to flesh that out, because intentionality, as we know as magical practitioners, is the start of it all. And so if we become more mindful of our intentions, and more mindful of even those sort of subconscious things that come out, when somebody gets a job promotion and you're genuinely happy for them, but there's a piece of your mind that says, why can't I catch a break?
Right.
That can throw the eye.
That can, because you're admitting that you're lacking something.
Right.
And that lack is gonna.
And then if you take that with you, it's, I think of a midrashic story from the New Testament, when the teacher says, if you go to a place and they don't welcome you, that's maloikia. They don't welcome you. You need to shake every speck of sand from your shoe, which sounds metaphoric, but really, if you had a speck of sand in your shoe and you kept on walking, you're going to get a blister. If that blister gets infected, you're going to lose your leg. So it's all mindfulness to me. Would you say that the heart of this practice is a powerful exercise in mindfulness?
A powerful exercise, yes, absolutely, an exercise in mindfulness. And and people who have seen me or heard me speak or seen some of the other writing will probably say, oh no, he's going to say that word again, because I say it all the time. But it's mindfulness, but it really is the first step about all of it it's a mindfulness, but becoming aware of it is such a powerful step. And people are not necessarily aware of it. They think, oh, I've just had this year of bad luck. One bad thing happens after another. Then they'll go down a list. 55 things happen, right down to, I broke my 3 favorite dishes last week, and this week I broke my favorite mug, and I tripped down those minor things, and then they put it with, all these other large scale sort of bad things that happened, but they're not aware of it. And I've certainly spoken with people who've said to me, everything is all right in my life, but there's this one area, I can't seem to catch a break when it comes to relationships or love or this. Everything always goes down. They're not aware of it. And once you become aware of what the I is, that's when the idea of living, that where the mindful stuff comes in, because your mind changes once you're aware of it.
Right.
That's a big part of it.
Michael, before you chime in with questions or comments, since you have your glasses on and I can't find mine, can you read what that says on the screen?
Sure. Ellen writes, I'm seeing the intersectionality through my Slavic ancestry. Don't boast, whispers.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like this is Allison's. These are folks, Antonio, from our school, where next week's topic is actually Maloikio at Inner Alchemy. So they're all watching this as their homework tonight. What did Allison say?
She says, I still have the one my grandmother gave me from the first day I was brought home.
Oh, the Maloik medal. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So go ahead, Michael. Did you have anything to add to that or ask?
And now I forgot. I come back to me. Back to me because I just lost it.
Okay, because I got a million questions. So I think another thing, Antonio, that I really loved about this, because some of our mutual friends, Grace among them, have written beautifully about the Maloikyo, but yes, you bring up something that most of us always kept quiet, and it's one of the reasons I actually started the school, because I didn't want it to be publicly on YouTube, because I didn't want agita from my cousins and my aunts and everything. But I'm so grateful that you did it, because my rule is, if somebody else said it before me publicly, then I'm gonna share it, because I think these things make a difference in our lives. And that's the whole idea of defensive magic and hexes, and how and why you would use this. People who know me know I'm a social justice fanatic. Nothing motivates me and animates my work more than that. And so talk, if you would, a little bit about how using this is not, I hate the concepts of black magic, white magic, and all these racist constructs. But hexes are used to create balance. Talk a little bit about that, as you do in your book.
So when I wrote that last chapter of my book, for some people, and I've received a lot of response about, the last chapter, which is how to cast the evil eye. And I think I open that chapter and I say it's counterintuitive. I know if you've read this whole book about how, about the evil eye, the negativity, the force, how to diagnose it, how to get rid of it and be aware of the amulets, all that stuff. And then I tell you to turn the page to the last chapter and it's how to cast it. Well, the reason is because, and in the way I was trained also as a magical practitioner, that was something that stayed with me as well. And I do believe, and you quoted me there, I wrote about how learning how to cast the evil eye and the idea of hexes and this, it is not so much about, turning the other cheek is not, in my opinion, the way that healing is done. It's not the way that, fixing those problems is accomplished. When a curse or a hex or negative energy is thrust upon you and it affects your life and it spirals through, whatever it is, whether it's on a minor scale or whether it's on a major scale, whether it's just about your finances, whether it's just about your home, your health, your love, whatever it is, it throws things out of balance. And that's really what happens. People will talk about, the evil, well, I'm suffering from insomnia, nightmares. That throws your life out of balance. I lost my appetite. I have headaches. My car is breaking. This is all stuff that's out of balance. So when you're using it in the way of defensive magic, when you learn how to use your own energy, and I go through the methods of that in the book, it's about restoring balance, because we're so often taught, just in general, a lot, that you turn the other cheek, you ignore it and it'll go away. Don't sort of step up that game. But that leaves you out of balance, and that leaves you in the place of being victimized in that way. It leaves you in the place of feeling, this was thrust upon me unjustly, and what happened here? Why is this happening to me? I just want it to go away. You have to take the action sometimes to make it go away. And when you do that, you are restoring balance to your life. And it's not about turning around and saying, well, if I do this, I don't want this to boomerang back to me 3 times, and when, a lot of these ideas. And by the way, and I write about it in that chapter too. You learn how to cast the evil eye, you learn how to work with that energy. No, you should not go around frivolously doing this. And the person who sort of, was rude to you on the street, or somebody said something to you when you were parking your car, or something small like that, I'm going to give me. No, that's not the point of it. I give examples for the book about how sometimes things can happen in life. I think the common one I gave, and that came from someone I interviewed, who a woman who said, she was in an office environment, and the guy was just harassing her in a way. He was constantly looking. It was just an uncomfortable situation. She said, it was uncomfortable for me. I dreaded seeing him. I got this terrible feeling. It was always this, and he knew he was doing it. It was, it was willful. He was just being bad, mean about it, cruel. And that, for her, she learned how to cast that's an example I gave. And as she said, once she learned it, and stuff started happening to him, he right away stayed away from her, because he started putting 2 and 2 together. And as she said very quickly, that anytime he showed up and it happened, something would happen to him. Now, that restored balance, because she didn't have to deal with him anymore. And there was a serious issue going on. If it was making her life uncomfortable, if it's making your life uncomfortable, you do go about taking those steps. And you have to be comfortable about it. And sometimes that takes time. I certainly, listen, I wasn't as comfortable with doing a lot of things from the magical perspective in my 20s that I am comfortable doing now in my 40s. It's a different thing. It's a journey. You learn aspects of it. But for me, that is very, very much what it means to use it as defensive magic. You're using it to restore balance to your life. And it's a necessary part, for me, in my opinion, of being a magical practitioner.
I think that that's really fundamental, especially as a magical practitioner, because so much about magic is about taking back our power, and it's about, really finding our sovereignty. And I think that gets lost sometimes in the spiritual milieu. It's just kind of like, well, if somebody does something wrong to you, well, you should work on healing that. And even though that there's a part of that's true, that sometimes the way that we heal is like, you gotta smack it back, like sometimes it's like you have to hit back, or nothing resolves itself. There is not that balance, and I think that that's such a fundamental aspect of spirituality that gets overlooked more than not.
Oh, absolutely, it gets overlooked more than, but there's also an aspect of it that people are very often people are afraid of it. They're afraid of taking that step, or and again, it goes back to, what if something goes wrong and I end up hurting someone else, or it goes back to me. That's why you take your time learning about your energy, and learning about certain methods, and learning how to use your emotions, and you take steps to it. But once you start learning it, it does become easier, and you learn, just like you learn how to diagnose or identify the evil eye. It becomes easier the more you do it. And so too does casting it. And people do very often talk about, yes, we all have to have healing in those aspects, but I don't personally think that it's a healthy thing to feel as though you have been in any way, that any kind of thing, any kind of negative energy has willfully been perpetrated upon you, and then you're just going to sit with it. I don't think that's good for your mind. I don't think it's good for your body. spiritually, physically, it's bad on all fronts, and it will have its effects on you either way. So if you can get to a place where you're going to counteract it, and you are, yes, you're going to, in essence, you're going to fight back, if you want to put it as simply as possible. I think that's necessary. And I do think, if you think about it, even from the point of nature, it is restoring balance to your life. And once that happens, you become empowered by that, because the next time it happens, and it'll happen more than once. It'll happen many times. People think, as magical practitioners, like, oh, yeah, someone said to me not too long ago, well, when this used to happen to you, and I was like, when what used to happen to me? What do you mean? And it was like, you think it still doesn't happen to me? Are you, it happens to all of us, and it'll continue to do it. But my response to it is much different. Now it's much different than I think it would be if I didn't know how to defend myself that way.
The ecology changes, like your spiritual ecology changes. So in the beginning, maybe you focus strictly on defensive magic, so that you could be certain that you're getting comfortable with your power, with your locus of power in the world. But as your worldview begins to open up, as you start to get comfortable in your own skin, then you recognize that unless you take back that power, then you're the one giving it away. You're leaving it open. So as much as we defend ourselves, to me, there isn't a difference between defense against Maloikyo and throwing Maloikyo to somebody to restore balance.
It's two sides of the same coin.
It's still defense, yeah. And you don't do it to somebody just because they gave you agita. But if that agita is going to cost you your life, well, then that's different. That's not agita.
Yeah. An eye for an eye is balance.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it.
I agree. I'm looking to see, we have another question come in. I can't even ask Craig to find my glasses. Okay, so Ellen was just agreeing and saying absolutely. So I was going to say, if there were, it's a question I like to ask everyone that comes on that's an author, if there were 3 of the most important takeaways that you want somebody who's reading your book to take with them, what would those 3 takeaways be?
I think the 3 would be, number 1, that the evil eye is a real force, and that the force, the energetic force, and it's real, and you can see it. It's ubiquitous because it is born from emotions, most of the time, from all of our emotions, and those emotions are universal. You have them, we have them, because we're human, and we're going to have them over and over again. Everyone has experienced jealousy. Everyone has experienced being the target of someone else's jealousy or resentment or anger. So, 1, that the evil eye is real. 2, that you can, no matter where you are in your life, in terms of spiritually, or thinking about, I have bad luck, or this didn't work out right, I never seem to get this far, I never seem to get this correct in my life, something else, it seems like something else is, but wherever you are in that place, in that journey in your life, you can absolutely get control of it, in that sense, by becoming aware of your own ability to take control of it, by your own ability to practice something that, and sometimes it's learning how to diagnose the evil eye. Sometimes it's you don't necessarily have to say the prayers. There are herbal remedies there too that I give you. Sometimes it can be about learning the botanical aspects. Whatever it is, you can take control of that aspect of your life, no matter where you are in it. As bad as you think you might have it, as dark or as sort of foggy as everything might be, you can step up right where you are and say, you know what, I'm gonna start doing things differently. You can take that power back, as you said. That's number 2, what I would tell people. And number 3, I would want people to know that when you're doing something in terms of practicing, like protective magic in that sense, the evil eye, I say all the time that the book is a friendly reminder about a rather unfriendly topic, because no one wants to talk about things like jealousy or what they might, have experienced from someone else. So I want people to know that in your in becoming aware of the evil eye, it's not only the people from your past, okay, who you have to think about. Okay, there are many people, and I mentioned this, I think, on a video I did on TikTok that I might have posted, where I said, if you think everybody wants you to be happy, everybody wants you to get the good job, everybody wants you, even people from your present, people you're surrounded by right now, you might not know it, but you will come to know it. But if you think everyone wants you to go out there and just live your best life and be happy, you're wrong.
Hmm.
That's not the way it is. It's unfortunate, but that's the truth. These emotions are ingrained in us. Where it's a part of a facet of the human condition. So I want people to know that not everybody wishes you well, and you should be aware of that. And once you're aware of it, you can take the steps to counteract it or to empower yourself. Either way, whichever way you choose to do it. Those three things were really important for me.
I think that's awesome, and it'll tie into my second to the last kind of, I think, question, because I just thought of another one.
Mm.
Michael, anything you wanted to? I don't want to keep cutting you off.
No, go take it away.
Okay. So one of the things that struck me throughout the book too was that where there's these parallels, and Grace and I have talked about this quite a bit, but in just like hangout kind of chats. But um, I really encourage people to use your book as a sort of as a foundation, as fodder or grist for the mill, in going in building that awareness, because there are, people say, well, oh, how can I do this and this to protect myself online? I'm online, somebody sends me a compliment, I don't always know if it's right. Well, I just want to just share that if you read this book, you're going to see there are certain color correspondences. If you really pay attention to this video, you'll see some of those color correspondences on the screen. And there are color correspondences. You can click, if you click, somebody pays you a compliment, always, 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 always click the heart button. If you pay somebody a compliment, always click the heart button. Again, why? Because it's red. It's similar. It gives you the similar correspondence to using red in one of the wards, or for some, in some cultures it may be blue that you're doing that. There is an icon. There's an emoji that you can use. A couple of them actually. There's the red pepper. There's the mas de ojo. Use those things. Remember too that one of the greatest ways to protect yourself online is to take some of the things you learn from this book and put it in a file and close that file and leave it on your computer, because your computer's hard drive is constantly spinning. It's a prayer wheel, more powerful than any Tibetan prayer wheel out there. So it's like wearing the charms we wear around our neck, the string we wear around our hands. It's the the chimaruta. It's all of those things, and it's transcultural. So you're not culturally appropriating when you read. I promise you, I would never invite someone on the book, I mean on the show, who's culturally appropriating. This is actually giving you the basis to find your way and reclaim your power. So I just wanted to offer that, because I found this an inspiring book, an exciting book. As an anthropologist, it's my nerd porn, to like have one place all of these different cultural practices and to see that intersectionality. But my last question for you, and oh, we actually stayed right within the 45-minute time limit. That's seldom
Already.
happens. Yeah.
Yes.
But
Wow.
here's my last question for you, because I promise folks that if you go ahead and follow Antonio on, I'm going to put up the Instagram thing, and then you can find in his bio the links to follow him everywhere else. This is just going to be the jumping off point. You're going to have other questions. You're going to want to know more from this practitioner, and sub-entity, you are, I'm so grateful that you've come into our lives. I'm so grateful that we crossed paths and that Gia reached out to me. So tell me, what's next for you? What can we look forward to from you as this book rolls out, and which is already doing incredibly well. God bless. It's doing really well. But what else can we look forward to?
You mean, well,
while you're talking, by the way, I'm going to put the graphic of the book on the screen so people can screenshot it and go get it.
So going forward, well, I can tell you that, well, I can't tell you actually in detail what's coming up next yet at this point, but there is something coming up next, certainly. You know, I'm always working in terms of writing, and certainly in terms of another book. I can tell you that what's coming next is a topic that will be a tremendous. I'm trying to be as careful as I can. It will be a topic that will be absolutely significant to so many people in the way that the evil eye is, but just a much different way. And it's, again, about using your own awareness and your own power to empower yourself further and to change your life, to change the lives of your loved ones. And it's about also connecting in a greater way with divinity. It's about connecting also with your own divinity. And those two are both, to me, very, very important. So I can't give you the specific details just yet, but when I can, I promise you I will. But I can assure you that there's something next.
And I hope you'll come back.
I would absolutely love to come back. I feel like this went by so quickly. I feel like we have to do a part two.
Yes. And you're more than welcome to do that. We're actually, I've started telling everybody, and so for all of our viewers and for Antonio, our show on, without glasses, you don't remember where you wrote stuff down either, do you, John Michael? Shit. Don't smoke weed before you start your podcast. So on, I think the 26th-ish, our next show anyway, so stay tuned, it'll be posted. But our next show is going to be on Catholic folk magic and Catholic conjure and intersectionality with other esoteric traditions. So everyone, including you, Antonio, are welcome to be on the panel for that. It's going to be kind of like the hangout that we did with Grace and Dee and Michael and myself, but with a number of more people, since this platform will support us with bigger groups. And that's coming up. Just get in contact with Antonio and watch what comes next, because I think that's the smartest thing that you could possibly do. Read the book. Like I said, there has never been a guest on this show in 5 years that anyone has said that was a stupid book recommendation. That was an author that didn't speak to me. If you're watching this, you're watching it for a reason. There's something in you that needs to hear this information. So I'm so grateful for having you here, Antonio. Bless you in all of your work. Michael, it's always a pleasure to have you as my co-host and taking us into our next episode. And then after that is the season finale, which is our Pride episode. Everybody has something to stay tuned for. And go ahead.
Thank you. No, I just want to say thank you both for doing such a wonderful job and such a tremendous service to the community. And it's a wonderful thing that we get to come together like this, and you give so much information to so many people. And it's really about, just like you said, it's empowering, and it's learning about things that somehow I think most people know that they want to know.
Yeah.
What they don't know, if that makes sense.
They want to remember. They want to remember what a part of them forgot.
Right.
And so that brings me to all of you that are watching. Thank you, because without you, this would be a dress rehearsal. I'm grateful that you're here. And as we close out our show tonight, we leave you with a word from an organization that's close to Michael's and my heart, the Charter for Compassion, which kind of lays at the foundation of the reason behind this podcast. So Antonio Pagliarulo, Michael Therese McQueen, and on behalf of myself, John Michael, we wish everybody well. Sa benedict.
Bye.
The principle of compassion lies at the heart of all religious, ethical, and spiritual traditions,
calling us always to treat all others as we wish to be treated ourselves.
Compassion impels us to work tirelessly to alleviate the suffering of our fellow creatures.
To dethrone ourselves from the center of our world and put another there.
To honor the inviolable sanctity of every single human being.
Treating everybody without exception.
With absolute justice, equity, and respect.
It is also necessary in both public and private life.
To refrain consistently and empathically from inflicting pain.
To act or speak violently out of spite, chauvinism, or self-interest.
To impoverish, exploit, or deny basic rights to anybody.
And to incite hatred by denigrating others, even our enemies.
Is a denial of our common humanity.
We acknowledge that we have failed to live compassionately.
And that some have even increased the sum of human misery in the name of religion.
We therefore call upon all men and women
to restore compassion
to the center of morality and religion.
To return to the ancient principle
that any interpretation of scripture
that breeds violence,
hatred,
or disdain
is illegitimate.
To ensure that youth are given accurate and respectful information
about other traditions, religions, and cultures.
To encourage a positive appreciation
of cultural and religious diversity.
To cultivate
an informed empathy
with the suffering of all human beings,
even those
regarded as enemies.
We urgently need to make compassion a clear, luminous, and dynamic force in our polarized world.
Rooted in a principled determination to transcend selfishness.
Compassion can break down political, dogmatic, ideological, and religious boundaries.
Born of our deep interdependence, compassion is essential for human relationships and to a fulfilled humanity.
It is the path to enlightenment and indispensable in the creation of a just economy and a peaceful global community.